So South Africa has recently come out of the local government elections while grappling with COVID-19, and this has also compounded the situation with the economy that is struggling globally as well. It's left many South Africans asking what's next and how better planning could help make the country more prepared for future hurdles. Joining me to discuss this then is scenario strategist Chantell Ilbury and Futurerist scenario planner Clem Sunter. A very good evening to you both and welcome to News at Prime. So let's begin with the elections, Chantell. Historically low growth, historically low, I should say, drop in turnout during this election. The major parties have suffered. The small parties also haven't done incredibly well. How definitive a moment is this for South Africa?
I actually think it's a strategic moment for South Africa, and I think 2022 is really going to be a defining year for South Africa. You know, we have had the build-up to municipal elections. Municipal elections will then go into the 2024 elections, and it's a flag. It's a flag that there was, first of all, a low turnout. So people are tired of politics. There's nobody that actually represents them in the greater sense. And secondly, I think coalitions next year could go one of two ways. We could have coalitions that really get service delivery on the ground going and bottom-up approach in terms of growth, or we could get coalitions that just squabble for the whole year, in which case we are at a strategic moment, and it's one way or the other. Yeah.
Clem, Chantell believes we're at a strategic moment. How do we best manage the moment? Because South Africans are already so anxious about many other things, as I was laying out coming into our discussion.
Well, you know, I can only quote the two scenarios that I offer with Mitch Ilbury, who's Chantell's son, in a book called Thinking the Future. And the positive one, where, as Chantell says, people actually get together to try and make these coalitions work at municipal level, we call people's economy, because we have had an exclusive economy. We created a political democracy, but we haven't created economic freedom for all in South Africa. So that has to be grabbed by both hands with the government now that we are moving out of the pandemic, to create this economy where we have a completely new wave of entrepreneurs, particularly young entrepreneurs in South Africa, to help bring our hideous unemployment rate down from where it is to, say, 5%. It can only be done by creating millions of new businesses. And if we don't do that, and we have the kind of paralysis that Chantell was talking about, we head into a scenario we call cautionary tale, which we saw a glimpse of a couple of months ago with the destruction of the shopping malls, where, you know, people get very angry. But it also showed the best in South Africa, where communities came together to protect undamaged property, and they cleaned up what was damaged. And so, yeah, the cautionary tale scenario is where we gradually slide into anarchy. But because of that incredible community response, it shows that we've got the spirit on the ground to create a people's economy.
And you know, Clem, you speak about encouraging young people to go into business and entrepreneurship. Government itself has acknowledged that small, medium and micro enterprise development is South Africa's only or main hope as far as job creation at this moment. But the young people who own those SMMEs will tell you that doing business, for example, with government is difficult. You don't get paid on time. When you do want help financially, you're sent from pillar to post. So how do you get them to buy into that sort of vision?
Well, I personally feel that Cyril should handle the recovery just like he handled the actual pandemic. He set up a team of medical experts, a council of medical experts, who helped him negotiate the pandemic. And we've done very well. We're not having a fourth wave like Europe at the moment. And I think that on the whole, people have been kept up to date on the measures being taken by government. Cyril has really led from the front on TV. He should now set up a council of entrepreneurs, people who've really run small businesses and big businesses and who created them from scratch. And he should take their advice on what is required, as you say, to remove the bureaucracy, to pay people on time, to get big business to put part of its supply chain towards creating this new generation of entrepreneurs, to get the banks to set up a micro-lending agency so that everybody has access to capital in this country, and to integrate the township economies into the mainstream economy and bring in all the informal sector people into the mainstream economy. That's what should happen. And then he should go on TV like he's done in the pandemic and say, these are the objectives we set ourselves, and then he should give a regular progress report on that.
And we'll circle back to the point you're making about COVID shortly, Clem. I want to go back to Chantell. And Chantell, I want to ask you about the suggestion from Clem there about the president perhaps taking the charge economically and leading those briefings to get young people galvanized and more confident in the country's path forward economically from a political base. And I want to ask you then if government can be relied on to lead that sort of strategic planning, given its history and track record.
I think, and Clem is quite right, with we need to take it forward, and, you know, Cyril Ramaphosa has to actually be the leader or the champion of it. To your question whether governments could do it on their own, I don't think so. I don't think that they would be able to get the structure. And if you really look, if you underpin our basic economic model for the country, it's always been a big business-driven economy. And we actually now almost need to relook at the whole economic model for South Africa. Yes, Cyril Ramaphosa should be championing it. There should be political will. But I think it will come back to what Clem has said many years ago as well, an economic, not a CADESA, because, you know, that terminology is not so great, but an economic conference where everybody gets together to be able to work out what's needed from the banks, from the entrepreneurs, where government needs to put regulation in to enable. It's a big picture. Yeah.
Clem, you referenced the pandemic. There are some warnings that South Africa could face its fourth wave. It's not happened yet, and we hope that should it happen, it's not as steep as the previous waves, especially not the third. But the world as a whole is grappling with what to do as more countries open up. Economies are hoping to stay open once they are open. When you look at the approach that we have in South Africa currently, do you get the sense that we are proactive rather than reactive?
Yeah, I feel that we've actually handled the pandemic very well, and it's a juggle between lives and not losing more lives, and livelihoods, and getting the economy back into shape. And in the sort of previous scenarios I wrote on the pandemic, I called this the tightrope scenario. And the government has I think, walked the tightrope pretty successfully. But, and this is the real point, is that the game has changed because of vaccines. I mean, vaccines have come much quicker than people expected. And, you know, if you can get the number of people vaccinated in a country up to 80% plus, then you really can open up the economy completely, because, you know, you simply won't have the kind of tragic consequences that we had in the last 2 years. But that is the critical thing in South Africa, to get our vaccination rate up beyond 80, maybe to 90%, because that will, you know, give us the confidence to open up our economy. And I want to come back to my point, which is the government has to give as much energy to the recovery and the way we go about this recovery. And that's why he needs a council of entrepreneurial experts, Cyril Ramaphosa, because that is the only way now we're going to create the jobs. Big business is not going to do that anymore because of automation. And so the game has changed on work, and we're going to have to create this new entrepreneurial model.
And it all comes down, doesn't it, to financial well-being that's impacted by various other factors. Let me circle back to you, Chantell, because just this week, the finance minister in Parliament confirmed that about 27 million South Africans are dependent or receive some form of social assistance from the state. People say that's not sustainable. You've got unemployment at a record 34.4%, and that is just the conservative estimate of people who are still trying to find work. Are there any quick fixes?
Look, I think a quick fix, if one calls it quick, is to open up to this entrepreneurial spark and allow small businesses to play on the playing field. I think just putting more money into a big or into grants is not sustainable, and I think that we will go into almost eventually a worst case scenario if we start going down that route. So that's not the route to try and increase and allow people, obviously if they've got a bit of money, they can consume and buy in the economy. But certainly it's more around getting people into work. And when you look at how many are unemployed in South Africa, I think we really should come back to not only the entrepreneurial spark, but the youth. That's where I have a real worry. We have a basic education system that is not adequate. It's failing in its general sense. And then we have them coming into a workspace and they haven't got the skills. So I think it's not necessarily a quick fix, but I think one has to look at the whole system, see some, a few things that you can play with now to start getting going. But I think it's a long-term play.
And as you say, long-term, what needs to happen then to keep people going and encouraged and energized as we do that?
Well, I think in the South African context, when we have something like load shedding all the time, and then we haven't got water in certain areas, and everything starts to get on top of us and we become quite demotivated, I think that we need to just have a spark of something that is very positive. And as Clem says, people are waiting, they're ready, they're passionate about the country, but we need a little spark to hold on to start, getting this momentum. What that spark is, I think 2022 and even just service delivery and just trying to get things right is going to be that spark to give people a little bit more optimism.
Scenario strategist Chantell Ilbury and futurist and scenario planner Clem Sunter. Good to speak to you both tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much.